Since I'm at Google, one of whom is now a full-time SWE on my team, another of whom was and has moved on to other things, and another one is actually starting as a full-time SWE. He just got his offer and accepted it a couple of weeks ago. And I'm also an alum of the hiring committee. We're the Jedi Council that sits there and makes sure that the interviewers didn't do anything crazy. Google itself, you may have heard of us. We're a small startup. I think we're based in the Bay Area. It's a few people, something about like asking questions, I think. But they hire lots of engineers. And what's good about Google and other companies as well, but like Google's the first place I encountered this. It is a very rigorous, well-defined process for interviewing. And that's incredibly valuable. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well, why that's important. We have codified hiring rubrics, that being here are the criteria by which we decide how someone did in some number of dimensions on an interview. And Google values the engineering culture very highly. Basically, you all know the motto, it used to be unofficially, don't be a jerk, but there's a lot of other mottos, but it's a very blameless, fact and data-driven engineering culture, which is incredibly rewarding after working in companies where it was, sometimes cults of personality or something like that. My history, I've spent some number of decades, more than one, less than 10, doing software development. For some number of those, I was an architecture and development consultant to some Fortune 100 firms in finance and media and entertainment. I used to be a professor at a number of CUNYs, City University of New York, for those of you who aren't local and don't get the lingo for that. And I used to run my own hosting company for several years. As small as a business could be, it was me and one of my former students hired part-time. So probably as small as a business can get. So I'm going to leap right in and cover something that the interview is part of, the job search life cycle, right? This is what happens, what the phases are between you needing a job and having a job, right? There's a successful job search, right, requires that you connect, right, get the interview. There's lots of resources for that. That's not the focus of this talk, but it's worthwhile at least discussing what happens first. To get the interview, right? You have some documents, that being a resume, a GitHub repo, shameless plug there, a cover letter maybe, or some blurb about yourself on an application form. You do some networking, and I don't mean TCP/IP, I mean like meet people, right? We assume that people know about jobs or people have jobs to offer, have heard about jobs, etc. You do some searching, soul searching, of course, but more importantly, searching for available positions, advertise yourself, and finally apply, right? Hey, I want this job. I'm the right person for this job. Then you prepare for the interview when you get it, right? You get ready to pass the interview. And for that, study, right? Study hard, practice, do some mock interviews, do a dress rehearsal. These are all things you can't over prepare. You really can't, as long as you do the right preparation. Then the interview, what we're going to focus on after this preamble, right? An interview is not a quiz, it's not a test, it's certainly not adversarial, right? It's a discussion. You listen to someone, the interviewer, as a candidate, you discuss things back and forth, you solve some problem, okay? And it's so important, like, that you realize it's not adversarial, it's not a quiz. Then finally, there's a follow-up. I do know people who haven't gotten jobs because of really poor follow-up. One person I remember like emailing, hey, how'd I do? And I was like, hey, I put my feedback in, you'll be hearing back from recruiting. You had 5 interviews. No, really, tell me. Why won't you tell me? Like, don't do that. Like, the follow-up is important, right? You don't blow them off. You don't nag either. You set your expectations on both sides. You wait, you follow up, you negotiate, you accept an offer. That's the proper follow-up. So let's talk about our focus, right? Which is the interview part of the process. So step 2 of this 4-step plan, right? We're going to talk about what the interviewers are looking for, how to prepare effectively, things to do on the interview, things to not do on the interview, and some other resources that you can use to help prepare and pass an interview. Okay, let's talk first about how to demonstrate you're the right candidate. Okay, what makes the right candidate? Okay, they're looking for 2 things. And let's not give the second thing away yet. First thing is engineering skills. And this is obviously, for an engineering interview, but in any problem domain, there's going to be the domain specific skills. Being an engineer, we're talking about engineering skills. An interviewer wants you to have to demonstrate some knowledge of data structures, algorithms, and the cost of algorithms, right? Like what's more expensive in terms of resources, that being both space and time. That's your big O notation, to put it in our fancy computer science lingo. They want to see some problem solving and analytical skills, that you can actually think through a problem and come to a conclusion that works, that actually solves the problem. And they want to see you can understand code, that looking at some piece, some script or some set of, some snippet of code, that you can tell what this is telling the computer to do. What is this instructing our poor silicon-based friend to do? Second thing, aside from engineering skills, that's really just as, if maybe not more, a little more important, are professional skills. An interviewer, any interviewer, wants to see that you demonstrate some preparedness and good judgment. We'll talk in the things not to do about what might violate that. Communication. Can you let them know what you're thinking? Can you understand what they're thinking? Integrity. I think this speaks for itself, but maybe it doesn't. Don't go in saying, well, I want to see what I can get away with, or like, as long as it looks like it works, even though it doesn't. Like, no. Like, you want to do a good job. You want them to know they want a good job done. Show that, right? If you don't know something, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you don't know something, and you admit that. You say, I don't know the collections API, right? But I would go look and research here and there. Attention to detail. Making sure that your code is clean and consistent. There's an old quote, I guess it's a cliche, consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And that's not really true in this case. Like, consistency is the hobgoblin of large minds, right? If you name a variable this, you want it to be named that later on. Not, well, I mean the same thing. No. All I have to judge you on is what you've written down in that code snippet, right? So therefore, in that document, therefore, you've got to express yourself thoroughly and consistently in that. Thoroughness and reflection, and that's basically a lack of, I think the right word may be hubris, but overconfidence. Like, say I've written this, I want to go back and look at it and see if it works and see if there's a better way to do it. Show that you recognize that our first reaction to something or our first response is not always the optimal one. And finally, pleasant to work with. This doesn't mean that you're a charmer or that you're most suave or like, have the best wardrobe or singing voice, right? But people should not mind certainly working with you. I mean, you wouldn't want to mind working with someone else, nor does someone else want to mind working with you. You can be quiet, you can be an introvert, you can be an extrovert, a talker, or not talker. None of those violate being pleasant to work with. So let's talk about interview preparation. Okay, I love these charts, by the way, these time sequence things. Let's reverse engineer from the big day, the day of the interview, right? More than 2 weeks before, okay, up until 2 weeks before the interview, you should be studying. And that's now, right? The best time to learn something is probably a year or two ago. The second best time to learn it is right now. Okay, so you should be studying your strongest technical subject matter. And what that means is the stuff on your resume that you've put there, you should be comfortable demonstrating some expertise and knowledge of. And typically the convention is you list things in the order of preference, order of strength, right? Descending order. Descending, yes. So if you have languages, C++, Python, JavaScript, that's going to be interpreted as my strongest language is, what did I say, C++, second strongest is Python, third strongest is JavaScript. So those are the things you should know. And you do that preparation, let's say up to 2 weeks before if you have the luxury of that much time. Hopefully you do, because you're preparing, remember, now. At 2 weeks before, it's time to start practicing. For this, you want to do practice questions. You want to do practice interviewing with someone and mock interviews. This is like the best thing. I wish I knew this back when I was like first looking for jobs. Get a friend or two to form a league, right? Sort of like the Justice League, but it's the interview league. And you get your two friends, Flash and Wonder Woman. Okay, you sit down and you make a roster. I'm gonna, flash interviews. Who did I say? Wonder Woman. Flash interviews. Oops, I forgot the third person now. A interviews B. B interviews A. C interviews A interviews C. You make sure that everybody gets to be the interviewer and the interviewee, and the third person is observing. And you just keep doing this over and over. Practice makes near perfect, right? It converges on perfection. So you do practice questions you can find on the internet. And we'll talk more about what reasonable questions are in a little bit. But practice interviewing is so important. And there are things like look at the person. Since in this COVID-filled world, we're doing this all remotely, look at the camera, right? Don't have an interview where you're doing this a lot, because I don't know what you're doing, and it just, you want to be pleasant to work with, right? It's just off-putting. So if you can, make eye contact frequently, or camera contact, right? And that's the kind of thing that comes out in mock interviews. You get more comfortable doing that. Finally, the night before the interview. This is not the time to decide to learn the collections API. If you didn't learn it in the 2 weeks plus, you're not going to learn it now. What you do the night before is you get it. The best thing you can do, I'll tell you how I got my job at Google. Hopefully I had more than this going for me. But a week before the interview, my phone screen, which was really, because they were in Mountain View at the time only, the people I was interviewing with, I talked to my friend who will go unnamed, first initial A, and I said, hey, A, this person had the most beautiful studio in the world. It was looking out over this sunny street. It was full of he had big trees in it. It was quiet. It was huge. It was fantastic. I said, can I please have your place next Thursday morning from 8 in the morning to noon? He was like, why? I told him, I was like, sure, man, I'll go out and sit at a cafe or something. And it was a quiet place. I made sure that he had a good internet connection. I made sure my battery was charged, right? And I got a good night's sleep. That is preparation. If he's not your friend, fine, totally okay. But make sure your device is charged, right? Make sure you have an internet connection and get a good night's sleep. It's not a matter of being unbecoming enough. But if you come into an interview saying, hey, I'm really wasted, I'm tired, I was up all night. Okay, but I'll give you that. We all have that happen. But now the problem is if you're bad or do badly, I don't know if it was the lack of sleep or if you're always going to do badly. You've got to eliminate that uncertainty. No, I am here at my best. Fine, now I can judge you. Say, trust me, I can be better. I don't know you. Sorry, I can't take your word for it. You've got to show me, and you've got this hour or 45 minutes to do it. So sorry if that was a bit of a soapbox, but this is how people blow it. Please don't say the night before, I'm going to learn JavaScript. No, you're not. Okay, it just doesn't work that way. Finally, the big day. Have a good breakfast. Okay, this sounds like something your mom might have told you, but it's so true. Have a good breakfast. Don't load up on sugar or caffeine like I did actually this morning. Do what I say, not what I do. How's that? Dress comfortably but professionally. Please, and this does happen. I had somebody join me for an interview in a dirty undershirt sitting on their bed. I was like, oh no, I don't want to look at those stains. I'm sorry. Please don't do that, okay? I mean, you don't have to wear a suit and tie, but like this, right? Or, non-male wardrobe equivalent. But yeah, just dress comfortably. Nobody wants you to be choked, but somewhat professionally and cleanly. And dial in 2 minutes early. It doesn't, no one wants you there a half hour early or paying them, hey, you're not in the meeting yet. Yes, I know, we're meeting in a half hour. 2 minutes early is a good amount, I think. Because then if they're not there yet, you can sit there and wait for them to join the room. If they are there, you show that you're on time, but not annoyingly on time. So I'm going to say something like 2 minutes early is good. Yes, now the big day. That would be the day of the interview, right? T-0 and counting. And I can speak from my experience, this is what to expect at Google, from friends at Microsoft, from interviews I've taken at a couple of other engineering firms. I'm not going to say because my coworkers and manager might see this and know where I had been interviewing, wasn't happy. Not happening now. But this is the kind of thing to expect. There are some introductions. Remember, they're a person, you're a person. You both should recognize that. So a minute of chit chat is expected and fine. And the thing to remember is it's not adversarial. A lot of times, and I understand it's easy to think this, right? Because nobody wants, there's this fear of rejection. The interviewer is not your enemy, right? They're not there to fail you. My God, the opposite. They want to hire you so badly. Okay, an interview takes a lot of time, both on your part and on theirs, right? They've got set up time, finding a slate of interviewers, preparation. Each interviewer takes time out of their schedule. They've got to write feedback later. They have to check out questions. Okay, they don't want to do this again. And if they fail you, they've got to keep doing this over. And plus, they have an open headcount they want to fill. They want an engineer in that virtual seat doing some work. They don't want an open headcount forever. So they want to hire you so badly. Just make it easy for them, right? Remember that. It's not adversarial, it's cooperative. So after the introductions, okay, they're going to say some problem, right? Like here's some code, look at, or here's a problem I'd like you to write some code or implement or design a solution for. It's really important you understand the problem statement. What you don't do is start writing code. That is the last thing you do, okay? You want to understand, make sure you understand the problem statement. What is it they're asking for? Then you implement a solution. Then you test your implementation. Remember what I said, lack of arrogance or hubris. You assume that there might be problems, and as long as you find them, that's fine. Then you discuss and reflect on the solution you've ended up with. Let's be more detailed, shall we? Here is this amazing flow chart that I laid out in Google Drawings. And let's just start at the top, right? You can read it. You listen and you take some notes. And that literally can be on paper, in a doc, somewhere, like as they're saying, so I want to send you a stream of integers, terminated by a negative, terminated by this, and do that, and do that. Like make sure, because remember, you're nervous, they're like rushing through it, take notes, it's fine. But say, if you want, I'm going to take some notes while you describe it. Great. That makes you look super prepared, right? And super responsible. So by all means, do it. Ask some clarifying questions. And let's talk about clarifying, right? To make more clear. If, looking back over the problem statement, there's any ambiguity or any vagueness or fogginess, you want that cleared up. You want this to be like crystal clear and razor sharp and every other cliche you can think of. So you want to connect it. When you said a stream of integers, did you mean that they're terminated like a stream, like a file stream, EOF? On integers, did you mean 32-bit values? Ask anything that's vague at all. Don't think I'm afraid that I'll annoy them. No. They want to know that you do this kind of thinking. Okay? Then when you think you've understood it, okay, make sure you understand it, right? Do a round trip, so to speak. You come back to them and say, okay, I just want to make sure I understand. So you want me, and in your own words, restate what you think they're asking you for. So you want me to write some code that'll take integers, some number of them, and when I get a negative number, that'll be the end of the stream, and then I calculate the deviation and the ceiling and floor. Is that right? And they'll say, yes, great, agreed. Or, no, that's not what I really wanted. Oh, okay, then what part was off? The terminating. Wait, so then what did you mean by how will it be terminated? Ask some more clarifying questions, right? Continue in that loop, okay? Until you restate the problem to them and they say, yes, got it, great. Then you've got through the understand the problem part. Then you think. That is the best thing you can do in an interview, right? Think. But it's important that you let them know you're thinking. You know what, I'm gonna take a moment. I just wanna think about how to solve this. Great, okay. Or if you're someone like me who like talks to think, say, all right, I just want to brainstorm with you some ideas. I mean, this isn't my solution, but I just want to go through it. This is like, I think well out loud. Great, okay, good to know. Then you say, okay, here's what I think I'll do. I'm gonna do this and that and that, then I'm gonna do this and that and that, I'm gonna sort them, I'm gonna do this. And they'll say, well, okay, but have you thought about this? Oh no, yes, good point. Go back, say, so I'm gonna do this and that, sort them, then like take off the max and min values to smooth it, then get the average. They'll say, yeah, great, okay, time to write some code. after you completely know, you and they both agree. Because if you write code without this, okay, you could write some great code, too bad it wasn't what they wanted. Imagine you're a surgeon, right? Somebody comes in and you replace their, I don't know, spleen. And they say, it's a great job, doctor, too bad they were here for appendectomy. Oops. Okay, but it was a great spleen removal. Okay, you don't want that, right? So that's what you make sure. We're removing a spleen today, right? Okay. Implement the solution, then test. Say, you know what? I just want to make sure this works, and here's how I'm going to prove that it works or not. Then you discuss. Looking back at the code, now that it works, I see that I could have made this ON if I got rid of this outer loop. And instead, I would have just cut off the max and min immediately. Great, okay. So that's the discuss and reflect part. So now I'm going to dive deep into each of these. Understanding. Kind of already did this, but I spoke too soon on the last slide. You listen to the problem. And this is really important. Remember what I said, they want you to get the job, right? So if they say something, don't dismiss it. They probably said it for a reason. So if I say, have you thought about the max value not being positive? Think, why would they say that? It was probably a hint. Take notes if you need to, but guess what? You need to. Human memory is not a great recording medium. Asking clarifying questions, and when you think or understand, you confirm. This is all what I've just said, right? Then the think part. This person is thinking in this big white room that's like an airport terminal from Starfleet Academy year 2271. That is thinking. But you want to show how you think. Remember what I said, right? If you do it silently, that's fine, but tell them that. If you think out loud, tell them that too and work with them. And there's nothing wrong. If you're a silent thinker, that's great. But if you do this, if I think about this, right? If I say, here's the problem, you say, is it this? And then you just sit there quietly, and you're like, uh-oh, what's happening? Like, oh no, what's going on? As opposed to if you say, you know what, I'm just gonna take a few minutes to think this through and like sketch it out here. Is that okay? You're gonna say, sure. Like, glad to hear it. I just want to know what's going on, right? Don't make it a mystery for me. Then when you propose, okay, don't write code. Remember what I said. You discuss or write it at a high level. High level being like a natural language, like English or whatever language it's being done in. Diagrams are great. I love drawing shapes and connecting them with arrows. Do that. If that, whatever works, however you express yourself well, given the medium, right? That these days it's going to be Zoom or Hangouts, etc. But make some diagrams, write it out or talk it out in English or whatever language you're using on the interview, that's fine. Note the caveats. Like if you see yourself, oh, this won't be optimal because I'm scanning through everything twice, like that's fine, but note the caveats, say it so that they don't say, wow, I don't think they realized that they didn't have to sort. Oh, they actually wrote, I won't have to sort if I do this, fine. Or I don't know if this will work with negative numbers, I'll have to test, fine. You note the caveats before they do. Okay, and listen to feedback. Remember what I said. If they say something, they have a reason for saying it. They're probably giving you a hint. Then when it's time to implement, right, you could just do this depth first. If you have, let's say, 2 functions to write, you could just start writing 1 and then 2. I think it's a lot better. I don't just think. I pretty much know it's a lot better if you've got some number of methods or functions to write. Put the signatures up first, right? So like in C++, you would write like void, get all stuff, parens, const, int, first stuff, star, okay, whatever it is. Write these method signatures first, okay? Put in some comments in the code first as pseudocode, like first // first I will sort all the input numbers in blah, going up to count elements, then // here I will do this and that, right? So that's sorry. Okay, so that's the first thing to do. Then fill in the actual code. You've got your methods identified, write the code, make it neat. Like pay attention to margins to some degree, right? Indent, make it consistent. If you had like first val or floor there, call it first val or floor there. Don't change the variable and say, oh, well, I meant that to be the same. That is not good. Right? You want to show that you can be consistent, that you write good code. Use real names, like the examples I gave there. Int1, well, I can sort of tell it's an int by the fact that it's an int. Doesn't say what it is. Int, lower bound. Oh, that's the lower bound. Okay? You name it by what it does, not what it is. That's maybe the right way to say it, right? Like you would not say, like your address is not pile of bricks on, Chauncey Street. It's 503 Chauncey Street. And put some comments if they're assertions or things that you know should or must be true. Put those in the code that really looks good. Then you want to test your code. You've got it written, okay? You want to step and say, well, now I'd like to test it. And this is really important. Walking through the code, one test case is great, 2 or 3 or more is better. And when you do test, you want to make sure, and you volunteer, show how on top of this you are. Consider edge cases. And by that I mean there are special things, right? They're not like other things. 0 is a special number, nil or null, depending on your language, is a special value. Empty strings often behave differently than non-empty strings. Blanks, negative numbers and positive numbers can be different. Very large numbers might cause overflows, so you want to cover those. So you want to cover all of these, or as many of these as you can, in your test cases. And for that, you want to have the test cases be very diverse, okay? So for example, if I've got this function, apply factor limits, sounds like it must apply some factor limits. It takes 3 things, 3 parameters, a lower, an upper, and a previous. And I don't know what those really would do. I just made that up as a signature. But let's take a look at the first example of a test case suite or set of tests. You might say, well, I'm going to test it with the following. 1 and 5 and 0, 2 and 10 and the results of the first one, and 5 and 11. Great, but that didn't really cover any of these test cases. I don't see any zeros, I don't see any negatives, I don't see any large values. It's all the same test sort of, right? It's 1, 5, 2, 10, and 5, 11 are all a couple of integers, both positive, kind of near each other on the number line. A better or more diverse example suite would be test case suite 2. The first one has a 0, because 0, you can look up Schoolhouse Rock, My Hero 0, if you want to see the real story of 0, but 0 is a very special number, so always give it some attention. 0 and 5, then -2 and 3. And finally, 2 and 10,000, a relatively large number. But you want to show, look, I've covered negatives, I've covered crossing the 0 boundary, I've covered including the 0 boundary, and I've covered large numbers, right? My test cases show lots of diversity because code behaves differently when it hits these values as a rule. Then you want to walk through the code. And to do that, okay, you actually do this. With that function up top, you sit there and you lay out, here are the variables in my function. And when I enter it, here's the values of 5 and 0, of lower and upper and previous and current. And you walk through each line of code and fill out, that changes lower to 3. That changes current to 5. Just walk through every line of code. And as you do that, you're probably going to find if there's a bug. And that's fine. You found it. And remember, the only good test is a test that fails. Right? Like if you had assert 1 equals 1, great test. I pretty much could have handled that without you. On the other hand, if you've got a test that finds a bug in your code, look at how good you are, okay, to test your code and find a problem with it. You say, oh, I see. I didn't expect that. Oh, look, I actually have to multiply that by, I have to divide 1 by that to get a reciprocal there. Let me just put that in and restart. Great, you just showed how awesome you are. You look at your code with a critical eye, you found a problem, and you recognize the fix. And that's why it's important to have diverse test cases, because otherwise you'll never know what happens if you pass at 0, unless you actually try it. So you walk through the code doing this, and remember what I said, finding an error is good. As bad as that sounds, trust me, it's good. Okay? If you know I expected current to be 3, but it's not, say, wait, like that, I didn't expect that. Oh, I see. Yeah, the code should have done this. Don't fall apart. You're on top of this. You are showing how amazing you are. You fix it. Or they may say, so what could you do to fix that? Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe you have to think about that you're actually looking at the inverse, not the value. Oh, Inverse, reciprocal. Yeah, I'll divide one by it. Thanks for the hint, interviewer who wants to hire me. Okay, fix the code and resume. Everything is good. And then finally, at the end, remember I said you want to list caveats? It's time to reflect. Look at the code if you have time with them and say, okay, you know what? Looking at this, they may say, what's the complexity? You'll say, oh, the complexity is O(n) squared, which is not the best. Let me think. Could I make this? It was very brute force. Okay, if I were to maybe do all this, eliminate the sort, right? If I just kept track of the max and min as you stream the integers, maybe I could actually remove the sort and then it would be O(n). Yeah, I could do that. But what is really important, you can write code that's not optimal. That's fine. It's good to have a working solution first, okay? And then refine it, than to have something perfect a week late, okay? So reflect on the code, look at the quality of it. Oh, you know what? I'm actually doing this here and this there that's kind of inconsistent. Let me fix it. Okay, so you want to do this kind of reflection. Look at your code and discuss it with them. They can read the code also, right? They want to talk about it with you. And then, congratulations or not. Well, congratulations, you did a great job in the interview. If you don't get the job, people say, I suck. Pardon my French. No, you do not, okay? Think about this. There were 1,000 people applying for the job. And they're pulling out, let's say, I don't know, 100 of the resumes or the applications, right? 10 of those people got phone screens. 4 of them got to interview. 1 of them did best. Maybe you were number 2. Okay, you did not do badly. Someone else did better. That's fine. There are 7 point something billion people on this earth. It's fine, okay? You will just move on to the next one. And one of those days, you will be the person who did it best. You can ask, don't ask, how would I do? Because that puts them in a really awkward spot. Say, is there anything that you think I could have improved on for like future interviews? Although I hope I don't have to have one now and they'll get this job, but anything else that like you think I could have done? And they may offer you some constructive feedback. But if they don't press them, right? Don't make people uncomfortable. Make it easy for them. And don't say negative things. Like I once had someone say in an interview, I am as dumb as a bag of rocks. I was like, wow, man, that's dumb. Like why would I hire you? If like I could just get a bag of rocks. Don't say bad things about yourself. Because if you think you're lousy, what am I supposed to think of you? Okay, and likewise, don't say, oh, my last job, my manager so-and-so. Like, oh, I don't want to be that person next year. Like, negatives are just, keep them in here, right? That's something I feel like saying to people. If I had those thoughts, I'd keep them to myself right now. Like, don't diss other people because someday they realize that may be them, okay? And you can always apply again. I've had people say, oh, like I failed and now I can't try again. No, you can try again. Oh my God, that is the worst myth ever. They want you to apply again. One of the really good signals I can tell you from my hiring committee secret Jedi knowledge is that one of the things we look at is, oh, this person interviewed 2 years ago. And then we said they had to like learn how to like estimate complexity more. Oh, look, they actually did improve on that. Here's someone who takes feedback and grows. Yes, +1. We want you to apply again, okay, when you've done some demonstration of improvement, right? And last and far from least, here's some stuff to help you prepare. Google has got this awesome tech dev guide that helps you prepare. That's its job. And remember I mentioned earlier the Justice League? Okay, form or join an interview practice league. Okay, if you're a member of an ACM student chapter, they probably have these already. If not, it's going to start one. There's a club like a Girls Who Code club or a veterans engineers club or just a hey people who want a code club, join it. Okay, otherwise just reach out to 2 people in a class or on a message board somewhere, a Slack channel, and say I'm looking for people to help me with to do mock interviews with. 2 people is the minimum, obviously. 3 people is ideal. And you want to arrange it so, as in my adorable little cartoon there shows, you want to arrange it so that each person takes a turn interviewing the other person and each person gets a chance to watch. And just keep doing this over and over, right? Rinse, like the shampoo says, rinse, lather, repeat, okay? Finally, contribute to an open source project. or make a project of your own. But at the very least, find something you really like. Like for me, that was always OpenCV. But find some open source project you like that takes pull requests and has feature requests outstanding, and do something on it, right? It's a good way to help practice, get your code up to like to know that your code is up to what people expect. And also it looks great on your application and your resume. So it's a like relatively low cost, or let's say low overhead way, because I mean there's cost. You have to do the work of the pull request and the feature, right? But it's a good low overhead way to get some credentials on your resume, maybe make contacts. I actually did hire someone who I knew from an open source project. They applied. I was like, well, yes, I actually know this person's work. So when I had a little check mark at Google, how well do you know this person's work? I was like, very. And they're like in the top 10% of people I've ever met in this world. So it's a good way to make contacts and just to get some credentials, open source work. And that pretty much is it for my planned presentation. Ashley, how are you?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Raymond, for the incredible presentation. We have about 15 minutes to answer a few questions that we captured in the chat throughout your presentation. So let's dive right in. So the first question is from @Twiout, TWIOUT. And this person says, mentioning cover letters is something I've always wondered about. Should one always add a cover letter? Some tech companies even state they don't even accept them anymore. I usually struggle writing anything useful / extra that isn't already somehow mentioned on the resume or the LinkedIn. So what do you think, Raymond? Should people include cover letters?
That's really, I saw for the first time ever lately a bunch of cover letters from someone. And I don't know where this person got the idea from, but like it was full of things like I am a smart, responsible person who works hard. Like, well, no one would say the opposite, right? Like I'm really like honestly, I'm a bag of rocks and I'm lazy. Like just want to be upfront. Like you wouldn't put that. So I feel almost like cover letters. And if you say I know JavaScript and C++, well, doesn't your resume say that already? You're making me work hard here. So in general, I think that companies with a rigorous or like well-defined application process will have just that, right? They will have a say something about yourself, upload your resume, thank you so much. So I would focus much more on like there's two parts of two, let's say, elements that you can tease out of a cover letter. A summary of your skills, which your resume honestly should be, and a statement about yourself, which is a constant. You're going to say that you're smart and responsible and great. So and remember math, right? If something's a constant, factor it out. So it's like having a coefficient of 1, take it out. So I'm going to say no, unless, of course, respect the company culture. There are some places where they still for whatever reason, good or bad, right, want a cover letter. I mean, don't be defiant. Well, I heard that cover letters suck. Well, yes, but we have the job you want. Right. You figure what to do. So I would err on the side of not. But if a place calls for it, my God, you want the job. That's it.
Okay. So yes or no, depending on what the job description asks for, essentially.
Yeah, but default being no.
Okay, got it. All right, we have another question from @Ika No, IAKANOE. And this person is asking, how much time does someone usually have before an interview after they apply? This person says that they've been looking for a job over the past month, and they finally were able to find one this week, which congratulations. And this person says, I had around 2 to 3 interviews per day, but mostly when I sent my resume somewhere, I would get a response after them just with a couple of days between the scheduling of the interview. So they did not have the 2 weeks in which you suggested in the presentation. What should they do?
There's 2 things. Well, one is you can't push back too hard because they're going to find someone else who will take the interview 2 days from now. Mm-hmm. So let's consider that the 2 weeks, let's reset that and say, you know what? Once I know if you want to be prepared for that kind of case, once I know my subject matter, I start that cycle of practices now. Okay, so yeah, you can't fight, you can't swim upstream, right? If this place schedules things 2 days ahead of time, and a lot of places are, then you can't change the world you live in. You can only adapt. So in that case, just consider the 2 weeks to be some arbitrary point in time. Okay, now is when I know enough that I can start practice interviews and just do it. And also, while you're doing practice interviews, you will learn, oh, turns out I don't know I'm going to keep picking on the collections API. Turns out I don't know the collections API as well as I thought. I'll do more studying. That can happen in parallel. That's fine. They should overlap, actually.
Okay, got it. All right, so we have another question from @Heelsing07. How would you suggest getting a recruiter's attention from a non-top college?
Oh boy, Ashley, you've heard my story about this. So when I got to Google, I was probably, I think, the first CUNY alum at the New York office in engineering, and we'll assume that CUNY alum weren't in Mountain View. So therefore, I was probably maybe the first CUNY alum in engineering or in senior engineering. And it was intimidating. And this has changed a lot over the last 15 years that I'm at Google. But I gotta say, it's very intimidating. Like, I'm from MIT, I'm from Stanford, I'm from Brooklyn College. And what I had to come to realize is that those places may have like old school, old world credentials. But the fact that I was a working student from a diverse school gave me a lot of things they didn't. Like, I knew how to show up on time. That a lot of I'm not saying that you don't if you go to MIT, but I had to juggle things that people didn't necessarily have to juggle from an Ivy League, a more traditional old school background. What you do is you call out the things that you do get, let's say, from us. If you're I don't remember the exact number, but City University of New York, there was this insane number that 78% are full-time working, have full-time jobs while going to school. And you point that out, my time management was honed to razor sharp perfection because I have this job while I'm getting my degree. And that's valuable. Remember I said the professional skills count at least as much as the technical ones. And I can learn C++, but it's hard to learn how to show up on time or how to pay bills or get evicted, so I had that going for me. And that's what I really capitalized on.
Okay. Got it. Yes, those additional skills outside of your technical skills and soft skills are definitely a plus on my end as well. The next question is from @ChrisP93. What do you think would be the best strategy for applying for jobs? Should the person apply directly at their most wanted job or first apply to the other jobs just to get more interviewing experience?
Apply to everything. That's it. That's easy. Apply to everything.
Okay.
Get 100,000 applications in. Okay, because remember the numbers, how they're against you. They're going to filter, the way it works at Google and a couple of other companies that I know of at least is there's some robot that screens all the resumes, right? But I don't mean it would be really cute if it was a robot with a pen, and maybe a visor, but it's not. But there's some software agent looking for keywords and resumes and things like that. And 1,000 or 10,000 applications, maybe 100 of them or something like that get through to a human in staffing. Okay, so you want to get that out there, those applications, and don't say, well, what if I get all 10,000 of them? Okay, not gonna happen. Don't worry, honestly, not gonna happen. And if it does, great. Okay, but it's not going to happen. And if it were though, that's you get, let's say 3 that come back at the same time and say, well, we'd like to interview next Tuesday. Oh, actually, I have a commitment next Tuesday. Fine. You have a life, right? They will say, okay, well, how about next Wednesday? Great. Now I have interviews Tuesday and Wednesday. Do not worry about being too popular. There are far worse things in this world than being too wanted, too loved, and too popular. So get them out there, apply everywhere. And remember what I said, if the amazing job, don't apply to any, I'm going to give this a counterweight though. Don't apply to anything that you wouldn't want to accept. If you apply to A and B and you prefer A, but B comes through, don't say, oh, you know what, I didn't really want to work there. Then you shouldn't have applied because you're wasting your time and theirs. Don't apply to anything just as a practice interview, but apply to everything that you would want to work at.
Okay. Awesome. We have time for about 2 more questions. So the next question is going to be from Diego73. And this person is asking, what is a good way to start contributing to open source projects? Should this person choose a random project, or should they start with simple bugs or new features?
All right, so I think that that those are not mutually exclusive, right? A random project, I would never do that actually. Like I would not say like something I don't care about or am not interested, because guess what? Like if you don't like something, you're not going to stick with it. I mean, maybe you will, I don't know, but I would not stick with it, right? That's just not human nature. So for me, it would be OpenCV. Maybe it's Vosk, maybe it's some other thing that I don't know about, Blender or something, but find something you like. And then look for, don't bite off more than you can chew. Like I would say, I I want to contribute to OpenCV. Look, they've got a feature request that's open for the last 4 years, which is provide, non-rectangular bounding boxes to like, wow, that sounds amazing. And the fact that no one's done it for 4 years tells you something. Like find some recently reported bug that you can handle. Like it should do this and it doesn't. Like, oh, I can probably find the code that does that. So it has to be a project you like.
Okay.
And then, yes, definitely start with smaller, well-scoped, well-defined bugs, not feature requests. Because bugs means you get to look at existing code, find flaws, and execute tests to prove your fixes. And that, or feature requests that are really straightforward, like this should take this other set of parameters and be overloaded. You can probably handle that mechanically, so that's good. But the project is one that you love, okay, or care at least a lot about if you hold level for more special things. But definitely something that you would want to work on and something bite-sized, and then work your way up to larger things.
Okay. Got it. And our final question of the day, and I already know what your answer is going to be just from working with you over the past couple of years, but I want you to answer this question so everyone can hear your
Okay.
response. So the last question is, what are your opinions on cold emailing?
Code emailing being like, send me some code to do this, send it back.
No, like cold emailing as in you're going to reach out to this person without even knowing the person.
Oh, cold
Yeah.
emailing. It is the question I was expecting. Okay, I thought code emailing. That wasn't what I thought she shouldn't be able to do that. Okay. Oh Lord. Please don't. Okay. I get, like, remember what I said, you want to seem prepared and like someone who thinks? I'm gonna give you a really good example. And if you're watching this, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna shame you and name you. Shame and name. I just realized that that's a rhyme. But don't say things like, hey Raymond, I was wondering, how do I apply for an internship at Google? Well, let's see. If I go to the Google search engine and type Google internship application, it points me to careers.google.com/internship.
Mhm.
Wow, I'm your search engine. Or what's the start date of this job? You mean the job that's titled starting summer 2021? So cold emailing, introduce yourself, what you've already done, what you would like this person to do for you, and show that you have done some research. And so, for example, I got one, I remember somebody sent me a, hey Raymond, hey, how's life at Google? I mean, they put money in my bank account. Like, what are you asking?
Yeah.
And I wrote back, can I help you? I'm looking for a job at Google. Well, at least we got that far. Okay. As opposed to, I got one, hi Raymond, my name is blah. I'm currently a student at X. I was looking at the career site for Google and the LinkedIn site and the GitHub sites, and I saw this and that and that. And I was wondering, do you think that, like, even though I don't know Python, it's worth applying for this, even though it says Python and C++? And if so, do you have any suggestions to me on how, I might structure the fact that I don't know it to make it still seem like a pot? Wow, you made it easy. I can just write your response and be on with my life. Thank you. So make it easy for them. Don't ask them to and please don't send like resumes full of spelling errors. Like you do your work and use me for the stuff that you couldn't do. You could have looked and seen the application deadline. Okay, I'm not here. Like you're going to get 5 minutes of my time. Spend it wisely, not writing back, hey, because that's really awkward. So yeah, you can cold email, but load it up front with here's who I am, here's why you're hearing from me, here's what I'd like you to do, here's what I've already done. Thanks so much. I remember the most bold, and bold doesn't mean rude, right? It means like, a bit forthcoming. The person I mentioned, my former intern who's now a SWE on my team, I remember this person wrote me this amazing email. Hi, Raymond, this is blah. We met this hackathon. Blah, 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 blah. Can we have some time? I propose the following. If none of them are good, let me know. I will bring a list of questions. Blah, blah. I was like, yes. Thank you for making this easy. That is how you cold email someone.
Okay. So, do your research, be intentional about the questions that you plan on asking that person, and be specific about what the ask is overall. So it can be as easy for the person that's receiving your message on the other end. All great things. I say yes, yes, yes to all of those items as well.
Yeah, make it easy for them to help you, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you all, the time flew by. Like, where did the time go? And unfortunately, this workshop has come to an end. But over the next 3 days of university, you'll hear from campus leaders and folks in the industry on how to prepare for your next internship, use the latest tools, tips to express and expand your technical communities, and much more. We have all sorts of product announcements and surprises coming your way, not to mention a few opportunities for swag, and we all love swag. Join us again tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to start the day off with a keynote from GitHub CEO, Nat Friedman. Then head back over to the university channel to hear from Cassidy Williams on learning through teaching for your community. If you haven't checked out some of her work, definitely take a look. Her sense of humor on the tech community is worth the watch, trust me. If you want to be notified when you're online tomorrow, just give us a follow on Twitch and we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Take care.